as an historic.
Many false alarms. Good evening to you once again. I'm Brian Williams, and here are the stories we are looking at as we come on the air at this hour. U.S. military tests have confirmed that the letter sent to Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle contained anthrax. Not only that, officials say it is a very potent form of it. One broadcast report tonight called it military grade. Daschle says authorities have told him whoever sent it knew what they were doing. So far, though, no staff members have been proven to have been exposed. In an exclusive interview with NBC News tonight, a part of which you'll be hearing in a moment, Homeland Security Chief Tom Ridge says from the White House the threat of bioterrorism is his #1 priority, at least this week and in the weeks to come, what could be a challenging position in Washington. And as we mentioned, the United States forces prepare to begin day 11 of the U.S. air campaign in the skies over Afghanistan. 3 raids have already taken place tonight in the capital city of Kabul alone. During heavy daylight bombing today, a bomb did hit a Red Cross warehouse in Kabul that stored blankets, tents, and plastic tarps meant to help Afghans get through the winter. First, we begin tonight with the story that has 2 television networks in effect covering themselves. What happened to cause such a great threat across this country? The topic of so much conversation today, so much anxiety across the nation. We begin tonight with NBC News Chief Science Correspondent Robert Bazell.
Today, investigators combed through the mailrooms of every major newspaper, television network, and wire service in Manhattan not already tested. This, they say, a precaution after a 7-month-old boy got sick with anthrax after his mother, a producer, took him to visit ABC News headquarters on September 28th. Dr. Eric Rakow helped treat the child, who is expected to recover fully.
It's just a shock to think that a baby would have anthrax in the United States.
Health officials are not certain the baby got anthrax at ABC, but they are making that assumption. But so far, tests find no evidence of anthrax in the building, and no ABC employees appear to be sick with anthrax. Meanwhile, tests at U.S. Army labs confirm that anthrax was indeed sent to the office of Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle. Fortunately, no one was hurt.
We were told that it was a very strong form of anthrax, a very potent form of anthrax that clearly was produced by somebody who knew what he or she was doing.
This afternoon, the Justice Department released pictures of the envelopes containing anthrax with similar handwriting postmarked Trenton, New Jersey, that were sent to Daschle and to NBC News. Scientists now beginning sophisticated DNA tests on the brown, grainy substance containing anthrax inside to see if they came from the same place. At NBC News, tests come back negative on a second employee who appeared to have anthrax-like symptoms. But doctors are continuing to treat her as if she were exposed, and further tests have been ordered. And in Florida, no one else is ill. Public health officials are getting much better at responding to these threats. And as a result, even if there are more attacks, there should be no more Americans getting sick from anthrax. Brian?
Robert Bazell reporting for us from New York tonight. We're happy to be joined this evening by one of the best-known physicians in America. Dr. Anthony Fauci of the National Institute of Health is with us tonight from Washington. Doctor, regarding these kind of incremental attacks on Americans and the American psyche increasingly, because this is what, wherever 2 or more Americans gather, this is what they tend to be talking about these days. What's your reaction, and how can you reassure people?
Well, this is certainly very high on terror, and notwithstanding the fact that there have been tragic incidences of a single person dying and people like infants getting infected and suffering from this, the broad public health impact has been relatively minor. So the terror is the part that this is all about. This is not at this point, a major public health issue for several reasons. It's a very ineffective way to deliver anthrax to large numbers of people when you give it in the mail. And secondly, the level of alertness that there is now virtually everywhere in the country for this possibly happening, particularly in organizations like the news media, are having people be very quick on the trigger to get material tested, to get themselves tested, and to get antibiotics where appropriate. So the terror is the thing that's really predominant here as opposed to the medical impact.
How high is your confidence in that public health system if this should widen somehow?
Well, you know, there's a difference between individual attempts at bioterrorism as opposed to a more broad weaponization of bioterrorism. For example, if you were to have large amounts of aerosolized anthrax that would impact large numbers of individuals. Apparently, that's not happening. First of all, the risk of that, though real, and we need to be prepared for that, is very, very low. It's much easier to get a little bit, put it in an envelope, and terrorize a large group by giving it to an individual. It's technically incredibly more difficult to effectively do that on a large scale. So though we're ready for it, we're concerned about it, we should be vigilant about it, the reality is what we're seeing is something that's much more terror than it is medical impact.
We should probably talk about this antibiotic, Cipro, and perhaps you can aim your message at the people who would be predisposed to hoarding it, believing perhaps that there wouldn't be enough for them should they need it someday.
Well, that is something that we in the public health field, as you've heard many times, Brian, are recommending that people do not do. Because when people do that, there's going to be the natural tendency when they hear of something that happened maybe in Detroit and they're in North Carolina, they'll start throwing the pills down. There is a degree of toxicity to the pills so that you might do more damage on the broad scale if you have hundreds of thousands of people inappropriately taking antibiotics than there would be for the more appropriate measured way of if you're at risk and it's a proven risk, then taking the antibiotics. There's toxicities, there's the evolution of resistance of other microbes to the antibiotics. So in general, it just is not a good idea, particularly since the track record thus far has shown that when needed, antibiotics were available and appropriately given to the people. And that's the reason why the health impact, notwithstanding that unfortunate individual who's died, has been relatively minor.
It strikes me that Americans really first got to know you in a television sense when you were talking your wisdom and your concern over AIDS. And it also strikes me that that's the last time Americans were really, as a group, scared over a medical issue. Right. Americans are also used to having a magic bullet for things. They're not used to suffering from a lack of anything, especially in these boom times. Brings us to the topic of a vaccine. What can you tell people along those lines?
Well, the vaccine that has been made and approved for anthrax is one that was fundamentally directed at the military, in which there would be perhaps a tactical attack on the military or on individuals who would be exposed, for example, wool sorters or people who work with animals or hides that might be infected. Right now, the vaccine that is used for those purposes is in relatively short supply. We at the NIH and the CDC and other places are working very hard to develop an even better vaccine, one that's less toxic, that does not require as many doses to get immunity, and one that in fact might be much more user-friendly. And there's a lot of activity going on right now to make that available.
Doctor, it's always a pleasure talking to you, always reassuring talking to you. Dr. Anthony Fauci of the National Institute of Health, thank you very much for joining us from Washington tonight.
You're welcome, Brian.
Now to the investigation, and the question a lot of people are asking, is this the same group of terrorists, if everyone agrees that this anthrax scare meets the definition of terrorism? Are these the same people as the people who pulled off the September 11th attacks? Are these people being directed or perhaps even just inspired by Osama bin Laden? The latest on the investigation tonight from NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams.
The White House spokesman today summed up why it remains a key question.
The administration is suspicious about whether or not there are or not any such links, and that is being actively reviewed and looked at.
The timing alone is suggestive, the anthrax attacks so soon after the hijackings. The geography is a factor too. The newspaper office in Boca Raton is just 9 miles from Delray Beach, Florida, where some of the hijackers lived and took pilot training. And 2 of the anthrax letters are postmarked Trenton in New Jersey, the same state where some of the hijackers lived in Patterson. That's 60 miles from Trenton. But experts on bin Laden's al-Qaeda network say there's no record he trained in or used anthrax. And the FBI says there's no actual evidence suggesting bin Laden has anything to do with the anthrax scare.
While organized terrorism has not been ruled out, so far we have found no direct link to organized terrorism.
Also tonight, a warning from the Justice Department about anthrax threats and hoax letters. Over 2,300 in just the past 2 weeks, heavily taxing local emergency response crews.
These acts are serious violations of the law and grotesque transgressions of the public trust.
A dramatic example today from Fairfield, Connecticut, where police this morning got a 911 call from a man who said, quote, "My people have been bombed. Now we are doing a silent warfare. This is not a hoax." He threatened to use biological agents against several state and federal courthouses. The FBI says police traced the call in progress, and a nearby patrolman saw a man hanging up the very payphone used for the 911 call. The FBI says the man has since confessed to making the hoax call. Authorities tonight say the man identified as Fred Forsalina has serious financial problems. Now he also faces federal charges of threatening to use a weapon of mass destruction. Maximum sentence, life in prison. Pete Williams, NBC News, Washington.
And again, it's against the backdrop of military action and a nation still smarting after attacks on 2 East Coast cities that this anthrax scare comes up now. And to that end, we are joined this evening by Dr. Martin Hugh Jones from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He is one of the nation's leading authorities on anthrax. He is with Louisiana State University. Doctor, first of all, your take on how the government has dealt with this.
Well, I think they've done a very good job. Obviously, mistakes have been made, but we've been given an opportunity with few costs, except for poor Mr. Stevens, and plenty of time to get our act together and to find where all the weaknesses are in the organization. And I think these have been fairly obvious, and I think the post-mortem afterwards will be fascinating to see how well the different agencies will get together and admit their faults and set up a situation or organization to work better together in the future.
What about these false positives, false negatives, specifically the false negatives? In the case of Tom Brokaw's assistant, she was exhibiting the signs for some time, and it took a while for a positive test result to come back. Ditto the other NBC News employee who apparently is exhibiting the signs of anthrax despite a negative test result.
Well, this bug is extremely sensitive to antibiotics, and if the physician starts giving antibiotics before the proper samples have been taken, you're then in a very difficult situation. Mm-hmm. And I believe the young lady who was found positive, they ended up with a skin biopsy, right, where they got it from. I don't know whether it was on histology or PCR work on the tissue. Either is equally easy to do.
Doctor, what about the different characterizations, the different kinds of anthrax? We're told that some of it in some of these envelopes that have been mailed out, it has been cut by baby powder or something else to perhaps knock down its natural scent. We're told that the form of it that was sent to the Senate Majority Leader, Mr. Daschle, in a broadcast report tonight was military grade. Another NBC News report has called it professional grade.
Well, there's been a lot of rather inexact wording going on. I'm not quite sure what they mean by military grade. If this means it was engineered and to be at the right diameter, particle size, with chemicals attached, that's one thing. If they're meaning that it's the AIM strain, though there is no information at this point that it has been typed or strain identified, that has long been regarded as the American weapon strain, or had been designated as such if we'd ever gone into that business. Fortunately, we never did.
There was a report tonight that perhaps the strain that was sent to the Senate Majority Leader was fashioned or engineered or designed in such a way that would make the spores suspend or stay aloft longer, presumably making people breathe them in. Is that something you're familiar with?
Well, I have seen material very similar to weapon grade, and it is quite extraordinary. It floats like water. It's like feathers with wings. It's extraordinarily ability to fly through the air is quite extraordinary. It's an unbelievable material when you look at it, and it will go just like air and continue indefinitely.
That's a fairly horrifying thought. Are you worried about any of this?
Well, I work with this disease a lot and this bug. It doesn't worry me as much as anthrax or plague. There are some diseases that worry me far more. I know this one, therefore I'm not concerned by it. And it responds to treatment very well indeed. And, you know, I'm not worried.
Dr. Martin Hugh Jones with Louisiana. Look, specifically the men who fly the B-1 bomber. Our report tonight from correspondent Shelley Smith.
The B-1 bomber. Pilots affectionately call it the Bone. Sleek, powerful, and lethal. Capable of delivering 23 tons of weapons in just over a second.
I love it. It would be the plane, and it is the plane that I'll go to war with anytime.
At Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene, Texas, NBC News was given a rare opportunity to see the B-1 in action and talk with the pilots preparing for the test of their careers.
What's it like to fly that plane?
It's like driving a Cadillac. I mean, it's a rush. If I wasn't a pilot, I'd probably be a NASCAR driver.
NBC producer Al Henkel joined the boys from the 9th Bomb Squadron for a bird's eye view.
It's going to get bumpy up here a little bit, Al, so you want to make sure you're wedged in there pretty well.
B-1 pilots specialize in flying low and fast.
You have to stay mentally ahead of the aircraft. If you're mentally hanging on the tail of the aircraft, that's when you can hurt people.
Inside the gray bird, it's cramped. There's only room for 4. The rest of the plane dedicated to bombs. 84 dumb bombs, 30 cluster bombs, or 24 smart bombs.
It's a noticeable thump when that 2,000-pound weapon comes off. It's ejecting basically a Volkswagen Bug.
Looks like that's a 0.6 nautical mile patch.
Gordo is a Wizzo, a weapons systems officer from Unionville, Pennsylvania. It's his job to destroy the targets.
The B-1 may look like a slow giant, but she's fast. Able to fly the distance between New York and Los Angeles in just 4 hours at 200 feet above the ground and on 1 tank of gas.
A trip to Afghanistan would require 2 refuelings in the air.
As far as September 11th, we just want to go over there and do our part. It's good versus evil. It's about as clear cut as it gets.
Tonight, these B-1 pilots wait for their orders to make the 15-hour trip into harm's way. Shelley Smith, NBC News, Abilene, Texas.
We are joined tonight by a weapons officer, a lieutenant colonel of the United States Air Force, and during this conflict we are protecting a lot of the actual names, the family names of the people who may serve, and so we'll go by his call sign, which is Elvis, and that's precisely where we will begin our interview. Nice call sign. How'd you get the name?
That kind of goes back a long way there, Brian. Most call signs are given, they're not asked for. So it's a combination of making fun of somebody's name or something that somebody once did back in their past history. And I'll pretty much leave it at that.
So it's something you owe somebody from years or so ago, and you'll probably get them before before your career is out. Let's talk about the let's talk about the B-1 bomber. It's not as stealthy as the B-2 and not as big as the B-52, but I know you guys who man it are awfully proud of it as a piece of equipment. Tell us about it.
Yes, sir, we are. You're exactly right. It is a little bit smaller than a B-52. It was one of the very first aircraft to have some stealth capability. It's extremely small on the radar. It has capability of flying extremely low altitudes, 500 feet or so at night in the weather. We have a terrain following system. We can also go high level. It is supersonic capable, and we usually go low level when we're ingressing at low level at around 640 miles an hour.
How long?
It's extremely maneuverable.
I was just going to say, how long is a long mission for you guys?
Well, a long mission for us right now, we practice those global power type missions, which are on the realms of 25 to 30 hours, and we practice those quite regularly. I'm going to go fly tomorrow. It'll be over an 8-hour mission, and we normally fly our training missions for about 5 hours long. But we have the capability to fly the global power type missions.
When you look at your Air Force colleagues who flew in Vietnam, specifically the B-52s, those huge, unwieldy bombers that flew so high no one on the ground knew the bombs were falling, and compare them to this at a top speed of 900 miles an hour flat out, is there any comparison?
Well, the comparison, no, there really isn't a comparison. That was a different mission that those aircraft were performing back in those days. We do carry a little bit less than the D model B-52s in Vietnam era. They were capable of dropping 108 500-pound bombs. We can drop 84 of those same type. Ours are all carried internally, though. The differences and the greater improvements in avionics and air crew support on the inside of the aircraft, there is no question that we've made great advancements in that area.
We've agreed with an Air Force request, of course, not to talk operationally about what's going on overseas. Let me just ask you, though, if the family members of all of you in this crew are prepared if and when the call comes for you to get your ticket east.
As all of us and all airmen in the Air Force are ready to be called on at any time, we are all prepared. The families are prepared. We practice this all the time. There's no question in anybody's mind whether we'll do the job when we're asked to.
Now, to the role that we already know the B-1 has played in this conflict, we've reported extensively. It's been B-1s, B-2s, B-52s, and the F-Series that we went through earlier. What can it do specifically in an area where the terrain is not unlike the moon?
Well, the advantages that the B-1 and the B-2 and now the B-52 all have is it's really the weaponeering that they have. Specifically, we're talking about the Joint Direct Attack Munition, which is being used as we speak, which is called the JDAM. This is a 2,000-pound near-precision class weapon, which gives us the ability to strike targets in extremely precise accuracy.
Well, Elvis, we'll leave it at that. Again, nice call sign. Thank you for talking to us tonight. Good luck to you, sir. Elvis is Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Air Force. We'll be back with more right after this.
Today's business thought. The difference between WorldCom and ordinary network solutions companies? We own the most scalable IP network. They don't. We plug solutions directly into our network. They can't. We take precautions. They take risks. But you don't have to. WorldCom Generation D.
I'm seeing things differently now. I want to protect what I have, not just grow it. I need a new way to manage my money. I have all the help I need.
No kid can resist the taste of rich chocolate Ovaltine.
This is so good. And chocolatey. This is great chocolate milk. Is it Nesquik? Get real. It's rich chocolate Ovaltine.
Kids love Ovaltine's rich chocolate taste. And Ovaltine adds vitamins and minerals that Nesquik powder doesn't. So why give them Nesquik when you can give them more? And there are more vitamins and minerals in Ovaltine.
Ovaltine rocks.
Ovaltine, please.